On Monday, the Supreme Court ruled that a school board in Washington state violated the First Amendment rights of a high school football coach when he lost his job for praying at the 50-yard line after games. He's joined us before, and I'm thrilled that he's back to discuss his case. Former football coach of Bremerton High School, Joseph Kennedy, and special counsel for litigation and communications at the First Liberty, representing Coach Joe, Jeremy Dice. Gents, thanks for being here. Coach Joe, you served as an assistant coach at Bremerton from 2008 to 2015, and you made a promise to God that win or lose, you'd always offer a prayer of thanks after every game. You prayed on the field. For this, the school fired you. Do you feel vindicated now that the Supreme Court has ruled 6-3, saying that your prayer is not only protected by the Constitution's guarantee of free speech, but religious exercise?
Absolutely. It's the biggest sigh of relief because 7 years is a long time. We're going into our 8th football season. So you can imagine going through all the court systems and hearing you lose, you lose, you lose over and over again. And you almost start thinking, maybe I did do something wrong. You know, you get the doubts in your mind. But as soon as that came down from the Supreme Court, it's like, oh, man, it's perfect. I did nothing wrong. I did exactly what the Constitution says. And, man, that's a great day and a great feeling.
Any reaction from the players, your former players or members of the community? What are you hearing?
Oh, yes. My Facebook and my Instagram, of course, blew up like crazy. I haven't even been able to keep up with it. My phone has not stopped buzzing since this all happened. And yeah, so I've talked to a bunch of my players, former coaches, some of the people that I used to work with back at the school. So a whole lot of support and a lot of partying going on in Bremerton.
Jeremy, Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion, and he wrote this: respect for religious expressions is indispensable to life in a free and diverse republic, whether those expressions take place in a sanctuary or a field, and whether they manifest through the spoken word or a bowed head. Here, a government entity sought to punish an individual for engaging in a brief, quiet, personal religious observance doubly protected by the Constitution. What effect, Jeremy, do you think this case will have on similar cases involving public displays of prayer or religious expression in the school setting?
Well, my hope is that, number one, they adhere to what Justice Gorsuch said here and turn towards respecting religious expressions rather than disrespecting them. It seems the default attitude for most school districts in the country is when and if religion pops up on a school campus, they immediately invoke the Establishment Clause as a way to drive it off campus here. And Justice Gorsuch is exactly right. When we show respect for religion on campus and throughout our society, it only strengthens our republic, and especially on school campuses. You know, we had a question mark about whether or not the schoolhouse gates remained open to constitutional rights for teachers and coaches on their campus here. But Justice Gorsuch reminds us that we actually are at our most inclusive, our most diverse, our most free when we welcome coaches and teachers to carry their constitutional rights to the schoolhouse gates. No longer must they surrender them before they walk into the school doors. And that can only mean great things for our freedom. On
ABC's The View this week, that legal scholar Sarah Hines had this to say about praying on the 50-yard line. Listen.
My problem with it is it feels performative. Prayer is usually private. And when you pray, if this were a Muslim, she would be privately praying to me. The problem is you're on the center field. It was not brief, and it was audible. He would pray outwardly.
Coach, your reaction, was this performative on your part? Was it just to be seen?
No, I find that very humorous because they're talking about different time frames throughout the 8 years that I coached. Yeah, it was out loud and it was in the center of the field, but it went unknown by the school district, supposedly, for 8 years. So nobody knew I was doing this until they got a hold of it and made it go crazy.
Yeah, and she obviously, in her Bahama resort with her sunglasses sitting between Whoopi and Joy Behar, she apparently has never been to a town where Muslims live, because if she traveled to the places I have throughout the Middle East, here in the United States, in Disney World recently, Muslims regularly bow down and pray in public, and no one says it's performative, nor does anyone have a problem with it. So following the Supreme Court decision, Following the Supreme Court decision, a former parent, Paul Peterson, who had 4 children attending Bremerton High School, wrote an op-ed for NBC regarding this case. He wrote, quote, "Teenagers see coaches as authority figures who determine playing time and influence how well they interact with the rest of their teammates, their friends. When Kennedy met with the entire team on the field immediately following games, with the community watching, it would have been incredibly hard for a teenager, any teenager, to refuse to participate, even if Kennedy's prayers conflicted with the students' personal religious beliefs. It's not the job of coaches or teachers to lead school children in prayer or coerce them, either explicitly or implicitly, to join in religious activities." Coach, your response. Do you think you've pressured these kids in any way, or they felt pressured to join your prayers?
And that's a funny thing, because I used to be friends with Paul when I actually coached his son, and nobody has once even asked him. And I said, "Paul, why didn't you come to me if this was a problem when I coached your kid for the 4 years?" There was never a problem. But to answer the question, moreover, is that the school district, they did a complete investigation. I challenged everybody in the news media, the local, everywhere. Find at least one kid that felt pressured into it. Just find one, you know. But the cool thing is and they got their time frames a little bit wrong too. I was fired when I stopped praying with the team because it became a problem, and I was doing it by myself alone at the center of the field. And so it removed all of those concerns that he supposedly had.
Jeremy, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote in the dissent, "The majority elevates one individual's interest in personal religious exercise to the extent, in the exact time and place of that individual's choosing over the society's interest in protecting the separation between church and state, eroding the protections for religious liberty for all." Jeremy, does that decision in any way erode religious liberty protections? And what is this separation of church and state? What's that really about?
Well, that concept, those words, as you know, are not in the Constitution at all. But let's take the concept for a second about separation of church and state. That's meant to protect against 2 different institutions, the church and the state. Well, here we just have an individual going up against a gigantic institution in the state, and the power of the state rained down heavily upon Coach Kennedy. The power of the state fired Coach Kennedy for daring to exercise what are otherwise protected rights under the Constitution. In other words, what the justices said on Monday is that the Free Exercise Clause acted as precisely as it was supposed to. It protected Coach Kennedy against the overbearing power of the government to fire him and to force him into submission, to censor him, and to abuse his civil rights. So the only institution that engaged in any improper behavior, the court said, is the school district here. They engaged in religious discrimination. They violated his free exercise rights under the First Amendment. They violated his free speech rights under the First Amendment. So they violated the First Amendment twice. And then they took away his job under religious reasons. So that's a violation of his civil rights as well. So for a school district to use the heavy power that they have under the form of government that we give them to abuse a singular citizen, little old Joe Kennedy, that's a tremendous travesty here. And why a justice of the Supreme Court would be upset that the Free Exercise Clause actually protected a citizen is beyond me.
Coach, I'm going to give you the final word. Are you surprised that you were singled out here when in today's schools all across the country, we have all manner of people coming in and coercing? I think it's an obvious case of coercion. They're bringing on to coerce kids to a viewpoint or a lifestyle or a different way of thinking that may not comport with either the educational curricula or the parents' intentions.
Yeah, I see that every day, you know, especially at Bremerton. It's such a diverse and supposedly inclusive, but they're cramming all of those things into one thing. And I was just trying to take a knee and thanking God after a football game. It was something I did by myself. It wasn't even supposed to be with anybody. So I'm glad that went back to that practice, and that's all I'm looking for when I get back.
Well, thanks for being here, both of you, Coach Joseph Kennedy, Jeremy Dice. We wish you the best, and congratulations on the way the court ruled in your case.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.